Now, as you know, here on the Marathonbet Podcast, each week we give you a little bit of homework, and you can usually answer our questions through our Twitter presence, which is at MarathonBetPod, at MarathonBetPod. Last week, and of course this week, we were going on to discuss envy as the sin of the week. But last week it was greed, and we asked you on Twitter there who in your club or in your club's history had been the most greedy. Now, look. We don't know these people personally, so this is about the way they presented their face to the public. But many of you got in touch. I mean, Stephen Charman at Steve Charman 123. Stephen, you said Graham Lasso. Listen, where does that come from?
I'm quite happy to stick it to people as often as I can if they merit it. But Graham Lasso is one of the nicest people you've ever met.
So Stephen,
maybe greedy for knowledge. Maybe that's what Graham was greedy for. Greedy for knowledge.
Gavin Gritton, who's at Gavin Gritton, said Marko Arnautovic at West Ham all day long. Well, of course, he got the example there where he bellyached until he got a new contract, and then he couldn't wait to get out of the club.
Yeah, I mean, I just think everything, Arnautovic, goes into that category, but nothing compares to Alexis Sanchez. I think Alexis Sanchez is top of the tree for greed.
This poor man, he gets mentioned every week in one context.
He deserves it.
Okay, the next one you may want to... Are you sitting comfortably, Simon? Duke's Dad, who's at Duke's Dad 3 on Twitter, says, Adi Akinbaye, him with the Bentley. Peter Taylor signed him for Palace.
He didn't, actually. Peter Taylor didn't sign him. Trevor Francis kept on and on and on in a war of attrition about how Adi Akinbaye was the best defensive centre forward, how we had to have him.
What's a defensive centre forward?
Well, that was my point. I said I don't want a bleeding defensive centre forward. I want someone that can score goals. Now, I would say that Adi Akinbaye, as I euphemistically christened him, was probably greedy in the respect that he took everything as a one-way transaction and never gave anything back, even down to getting knee operations done by Stedman when it was not Richard Stedman, one of the best knee surgeons in the world, and then coming back and refusing to go and do corporate appearances that he'd been contracted and advised to do. So, I'm going to go with my mate there and talk about Akinbaye as being one of the greediest one-way transaction players.
Chaz Benson, who's an Aston Villa fan, he's at Dartman501 on Twitter, has got two Aston Villa players here. I think one of them's a bit unfortunate. Ross McCormack, he says, and Michael Richards. McCormack,
agree with that.
Yeah,
couldn't get over his fences, could he? Ross McCormack couldn't get out when Stevie Bruce was there. I remember Steve Bruce telling me about McCormack, and I didn't like McCormack. Was at Leeds as well, wasn't he? And agitating to get out of Leeds at one particular point. One of those that is, again, a one-way transaction merchant, but he's the one that couldn't get to training because he couldn't get over his gates, right?
Yeah,
greedy little sod. Yeah.
Michael Richards, on the other hand, I think it was a lovely footballer, the future back in the day, and just his injuries just overran him in the end.
But I also did feel that he had a slightly entitled attitude, Michael Richards, and I remember him at Man City and having a certain demeanour and outlook about him that didn't quite... He reminds me, and you're not going to like it, Danny, he reminds me a little bit of a Danny Rose sort of character, rather a lot to say for himself and not doing quite as much as he should do on the pitch.
Okay, well, I'm not going to argue about that. And another one, and of course, we're back to another Crystal Palace fan here, Steve Richardson, who's at SMUP1. Poor old Christian Benteke.
Oh, yeah.
Christian Benteke, he says, already looking for a free next year. The thing is, Palace would be delighted if he went on a free, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, Benteke is one of those players that when you look at Benteke, you remember him at Aston Villa. You remember the couple of goals that he might have scored that are worldies at Liverpool, and then you look at him now as the player that looks like he wants to play for Crystal Palace, looks like he's available for the ball, but is really hiding and cheating his way through games because either he doesn't care, or he's no longer the player that he once was, or he's lost his confidence, or these times at Crystal Palace are just treading water to the next opportunity, which will probably be China.
It can't be anywhere, certainly where anyone's ever seen him play for Aston Villa. It has to be someplace where they've got limited access to the Premier League on television.
Especially Crystal Palace, what we've been doing for Crystal Palace rather than Aston Villa.
Listen, I want to thank you all for your contributions there at our Twitter address at MarathonBetPod, where this week we asked you for the greediest players at your club. Later on, we'll be asking your contributions of things that you have been envious about, because envy is the theme of this week's Marathon Bet Podcast with me, Danny Kelly, and him, Simon Jordan. And now on to the part of the show which each week proves that myself and Simon are both charlatans and fools. Marathonbet, bless them, have been very, very generous with us, and each week set up a charity bet for us. All we've got to do is pick the winners of 3 football matches, Simon 3, me 3, and they will give us a load of money for charities of our choice. Again last week, although I did get the Leeds United Swansea result exactly right, we failed to do any good at all. So we're going to simplify it this week. International week. We're only going to have 3 bets, and between us, me, Simon, are going to pick 3 teams to win, probably from the home nations. And hopefully we can get some of this money rolling into our chosen charities. Joining us from Marathon Bet now is Dan Tors, who is the man with his finger on the button of all the odds that we're going to get and all the rest of it. And Dan, first of all, thank you for joining us.
No problem.
And second of all, obviously, being a Brighton and Hove Albion supporter on a football level, you must envy just about everybody. But what about a personal level? What's ever made you envious?
Apart from Simon's jacket.
Apart from Simon's wonderful jacket, which would fit you nicely.
It would look lovely, wouldn't it? I think
Yeah.
the one thing that I was envious of was, and it is football related, was when we let Glenn Murray go for a free to Crystal Palace. I think it's the worst thing we've ever done as a football club. I know he's back with us now, but that was hard to take.
Except he was brilliant at Brighton.
He was.
He's brilliant at Brighton now.
Yeah.
He wasn't brilliant at Crystal Palace.
It wasn't bad at
Oh, he
Crystal
wasn't
Palace.
bad.
Oh, hang on, I've got
that
this wrong,
season,
have I?
that season they went up in 2013. I think he scored 30 goals,
He
didn't
did, and he'd done his cruise shit in the
Yeah.
playoff.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Then, yeah, he did his cruise shit
And
in
then
the playoff.
Wilfred Zaha came along, and I was deeply envious of the Palace board there because they got to record a victory in a playoff semi-final at Brighton.
They did.
That is real envy when you get to watch that.
Incidentally, this is supposed to be the charity part of the programme.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I make a slight
No
mistake, and
charitable spirit then.
both of you go for me like attack dogs. Let's pick the first game you want me to choose from these home internationals. And I'm going to choose, Dan, if I may.
Yep.
I'm going to choose the Republic of Ireland to beat Switzerland, and I do that in full knowledge that Switzerland are the seeded number 1 team in that group, and the Republic of Ireland are going through a period of change. But I've just started to pick up a vibe back home in Ireland that, despite having the weakest squad they've had for a long, long time, I mean, the 2 Keanes carried the country for 20 years, but there is a togetherness about the squad, and I think they can give Switzerland a good game. I think they'll beat Switzerland.
Yeah, interesting. They're 14-5 Republic of Ireland to beat Switzerland.
At home, mind.
At home, they are
Yeah.
at home. Your point about the squad is very interesting. When you look at their back 2, I think Duffy and Keogh were the back 2 last time. You had Hogan and McGoldrick up front. Not household names, with all due respect to them. International footballers, mind you, but...
No, it has to be a team effort. It can't be relying on Robbie Keane to pull something out of the air every sort of second match.
Time. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Switzerland are very strong, but Republic of Ireland are top of the group.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm glad I've gone for those. Simon, we're going to talk about Scotland, who are playing against...
Russia.
Right.
Despite their showing in the World Cup, the Russians, I feel that with this new reinvigorated Scotland, I think it was a pretty poor decision, despite I like the fact Alex McLeish. I like him as a person. I think he was the wrong person to have gotten the job. I think Arthur and Gordon Strachan have got Scotland playing with a degree of passion and fervour and commitment and belief, and I think he should have been allowed to continue on that journey. And I think that with Scotland, under Clark, with a new mentality, I think they'll beat Russia.
And suddenly, of course, with the Robertsons and the McGinns of this world, they've
Exactly,
suddenly got players who are performing in the Premier League, which they almost haven't had for a generation. What odds are Scotland to beat Russia?
Scotland are 191 to 100 to beat Russia, and I agree with you in terms of Russia's World Cup performance. I thought, obviously, the whole country got behind them, a bit like a home nation did, and they got probably further than anyone thought. Your point about Robertson and McGinn, I had exactly the same thing written down. There's the flip side to Ireland when you look at those players coming through. And Scotland to beat Russia at home is 191 to 100.
I'll just say for those of you who want to hear the future, the Republic of Ireland have got a great player coming down the slipway. He's 17 years of age. He's at Tottenham, and Troy Parrott is his name. And anything can happen. He's a teenager, right? But if the people who run Spurs Academy, one of whom I know, have got anything if they've got any kind of eye for a footballer, he will be looking to break Robbie Keane's incredible scoring record for the Republic sometime in about 13 years' time, because I'm told he is the next big thing off the block.
Is that good?
Yeah, that's what I'm being told. I mean, he scored a goal for the Spurs on 23s last week, which made everyone's eyes water. And he's a big, he's a strong lad, without being too big. Troy Parrott, you can't forget the name. Look out for him further down the line. So we've got to pick a third result.
Now, we've got to agree on.
Now we've gone very, very pro the home nations, the 5 nations that comprise the teams on these islands. Simon, can we make a similar case for Wales against Azerbaijan?
I was going to be very mean-spirited because there's certain aspects of the way that the Welsh set about with people coming through that are flattered to deceive. I think Chris Coleman got very lucky in that European Championships in 2016, and it meant that we had to listen to people like Dean Saunders more regularly on the radio, which I had a degree of regret about. Although I like Dean and I don't like his particular current circumstances. But it's going to be very difficult. I was going to make a case for Azerbaijan beating Wales, but just looking at their most recent records, I think that's going to be very difficult.
Well, Gareth Bale is having to prove himself as a footballer once again. Dan James has had a brilliant start to his time at Manchester United, and surely those two up front will be plenty for Azerbaijan.
And Aaron Ramsey, of course.
But presumably the odds that Dan are very short.
They are. They're 13 to 50. But you look at Wales, they've only won 2 of their last 5, and that was against Slovakia, okay, not a bad side, and Trinidad and Tobago. So they are struggling a bit. Azerbaijan are 16 to 1, but your selection is Wales at 13 to 50.
Mm-hmm.
So as you're doubling your bet this week, as opposed to doing individual trebles, just to make sure we can give a little bit of money to charity, your treble will come in at £278.
Thankfully, hopefully, we'll be giving that money to charity. Thank you very much indeed, Dan, and thanks to Marathonbet for giving us the chance to put some money into these chosen charities. So now comes one of the crucial parts of the show, Simon, and all the listeners out there, where we have to pick 2 people to go into our sin bin this week. People who are guilty of the sin of envy, jealousy, covetousness, if you like. And by the end of the series, we'll have a whole squad of them, for which we'll be picking our sinners 11. I'll let you go first. Who do you want to put into the envy sin bin?
I think I'm going to go with the envy that I think that Mohamed Salah might have been feeling on Saturday about the goal-scoring achievements in Sadio Mane, which of course resulted in Mane having a turn when he came off the pitch because Salah could and should have played him in.
Okay, so that's Mohamed Salah, good. At least the football team we're constructing in the sin bin has now got a brilliant forward player.
Everyone will be envious of.
Well, I'm going to go for a playmaker, and I'm using the sin of envy here with a smallie. I don't want to slaughter him, but I've watched because people know I'm a Spurs fan. I've watched Christian Eriksen over the past 16 months, shall we say, a year and a half. That's 18 months, isn't it? 16 months. Let's say that. Gradually, his focus has gone off what he has at Tottenham Hotspur, and whether it's his agent or himself driving it. And I understand he's a top player, and his focus has moved on to clubs other than his own. And it's very unusual for football to say, I want to go and play for one of the 2 big Spanish giants. And then we've seen throughout this summer, and again, this might all change in the next 5 hours, none of these clubs have come in for him. And I've watched his performances deteriorate slightly as he has continued to look over the garden fence at Tottenham Hotspur and say, oh look, it might be a little bit better there. Warning, Christian, it isn't always better over there. Just ask your friend Neymar.